Marcus Johnson wiped his dirty hands on an old cloth as he looked around his small garage. The clock on the wall showed 8:30 p.m., and he was tired from working all day. His back hurt from bending over car engines, and his fingers were black with oil and grease. At 35 years old, Marcus felt much older than his age. Every day was the same: wake up, fix cars, count the little money he made, and worry about paying his bills. The garage was not much to look at. The paint on the walls was old and peeling. The concrete floor had oil stains everywhere. Old car parts were stacked in corners, and the smell of gasoline filled the air. Marcus had owned this place for 8 years, but business was always slow. Most people in town took their cars to the big auto shop on Main Street. They thought Marcus was too poor and his garage too small to do good work. Marcus lived alone in a tiny apartment above the garage. He had no wife, no children, and no close friends. His parents had died in a car accident when he was 25, leaving him with nothing but this old building and a lot of debt. Every month was a struggle to pay rent, buy food, and keep the lights on. Some nights he ate only bread and soup because that was all he could afford. As Marcus reached for the light switch to close up for the night, he heard a strange sound. It was soft, like someone crying or in pain. He stopped and listened carefully. The sound came again, a weak whimper from somewhere in the back of his garage. His heart started beating fast. Nobody should be in his garage at this time of night. Marcus picked up a heavy wrench from his workbench and walked slowly toward the back of the garage. The sound was coming from behind an old pickup truck that he had been trying to fix for weeks. As he got closer, he could hear someone breathing heavily, like they were hurt or scared. "Hello?" Marcus called out softly. "Is someone there?" The breathing stopped for a moment. Then he heard a small voice whisper, "Please don't hurt me." Marcus put down the wrench and grabbed a flashlight from a nearby shelf. He turned it on and walked around the pickup truck. What he saw made him gasp and almost drop the flashlight. Behind a stack of old tires, a young girl was curled up in a ball. She looked very young, maybe 16 or 17 years old. Her long brown hair was dirty and tangled. Her clothes were torn and covered with mud and blood. One side of her face was swollen and purple from being hit. There was a deep cut on her forehead that was still bleeding slowly. The girl's eyes were wide with fear when the flashlight hit her face. She tried to move away but winced in pain. Marcus could see that her arm was hurt and she was shaking all over. Not from cold, but from terror. "Oh my God," Marcus whispered. He had never seen anyone hurt so badly. "What happened to you?" The girl tried to speak but could only make small sounds. Her lips were cracked and dry, and Marcus realized she probably had not had water for a long time. She looked at him with eyes full of pain and fear, waiting for him to hurt her like someone else obviously had. Marcus slowly got down on his knees, making himself smaller so he would not scare her more. He had always been a big man, tall and strong from years of heavy work, but now he tried to make his voice as gentle as possible. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "My name is Marcus. This is my garage. You're safe now." The girl stared at him for a long moment as if trying to decide if she could trust him. Then very slowly she whispered, "Help me." Those 2 words hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. Here was this young girl, beaten and scared, asking him for help. He had never been a hero. He had never saved anyone in his life. He was just a poor mechanic who could barely take care of himself. But looking at this broken girl, he knew he could not walk away. "I'm going to help you," Marcus said firmly. "But first, I need to get you inside where it's warm. Can you walk?" The girl tried to stand up but fell back down with a cry of pain. Her leg was hurt worse than Marcus had first thought. Without thinking twice, Marcus gently lifted her in his arms. She was so light that it scared him. When was the last time she had eaten a real meal? Marcus carried her into the small office area of his garage and laid her down on an old couch. He kept there. He turned on all the lights and got his first good look at her injuries. Besides the cut on her head and the hurt leg, there were bruises all over her arms and neck. Someone had hurt this girl very badly, and recently. "What's your name?" Marcus asked as he got some clean rags and a bottle of water. Sarah, the girl whispered. Her voice was so quiet he could barely hear her. Okay, Sarah, I'm going to clean that cut on your head. It might hurt a little, but I'll be very gentle. As Marcus carefully cleaned Sarah's wounds, he noticed that she flinched every time he moved, as if she expected to be hit. This broke his heart. What kind of monster would hurt a young girl like this? How long have you been hiding in my garage? Marcus asked. I don't know, Sarah said. Maybe since yesterday. I was running, and I saw your garage was open. I just wanted to hide. Running from what? Sarah's eyes filled with tears and she started shaking again. Bad people. Very bad people. They're looking for me. Marcus felt a chill go down his spine. What kind of bad people? But before Sarah could answer, her eyes rolled back and she fainted from pain and exhaustion. Marcus caught her before she could fall off the couch. As he looked down at this broken girl in his arms, he made a decision that would change his life forever. He was going to help her, no matter what it cost him. Even if these bad people were dangerous. Even if helping her put his own life at risk. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he had a real purpose. This girl needed him, and he was not going to let her down. Marcus had no idea that this moment would lead him into a world of danger he could never imagine. He did not know that saving Sarah would turn his quiet, simple life upside down. All he knew was that he could not leave a hurt child alone and scared. As Sarah slept on his couch, Marcus sat in a chair beside her and kept watch. Outside, the wind started to blow, and storm clouds gathered in the dark sky. Inside the small garage, a poor mechanic had just become someone's hero, even though he did not know it yet. 3 days had passed since Marcus found Sarah in his garage. He had not left her side for more than a few minutes at a time. During the day, he would pretend to work on cars while keeping one eye on the small room behind his office where Sarah was resting. At night, he slept on the floor beside the couch, listening to her breathing and making sure she was safe. Marcus had used his small savings to buy medicine, bandages, and soft food for Sarah. He cleaned her wounds every few hours and helped her drink water and eat soup. Slowly, the swelling on her face went down, and the cut on her forehead started to heal. But the fear in her eyes never went away. Sarah hardly spoke during those first 3 days. When Marcus asked her questions, she would just stare at him with wide, scared eyes. Sometimes she would wake up screaming from nightmares, and Marcus would sit beside her until she calmed down. He could see that whatever had happened to her was much worse than just a beating. On the morning of the 4th day, Sarah finally seemed strong enough to sit up and eat without help. Marcus brought her some warm soup and toast, and for the first time, she gave him a small smile. "Thank you," she said quietly. Her voice was getting stronger. "You saved my life." Marcus sat down in the chair across from her. "You don't have to thank me. Anyone would have done the same thing." Sarah shook her head. "No, they wouldn't. Most people would have called the police right away, or they would have been too scared to help." "Why haven't I called the police?" Marcus asked. "You never told me not to." Sarah's face went white with fear. "Please don't call them. Please. They can't help me. No one can help me except—" She stopped talking and looked away. "Except what?" Marcus asked gently. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she looked directly at Marcus with tears in her eyes. "Can I trust you? Really trust you?" "Yes," Marcus said without thinking. "You can trust me with anything." Sarah took a deep breath. "My real name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 17 years old, and I'm from a small town called Millbrook, about 300 miles from here. 2 years ago, when I was 15, I was walking home from school when a van stopped beside me. 2 men got out and grabbed me. They put something over my mouth that made me pass out." Marcus felt his heart stop. "What happened then?" "When I woke up, I was in a dark room with no windows. There were other girls there too, some younger than me, some older. They told me I had been sold to bad people who would make me work for them. They said if I tried to escape or if I didn't do what they wanted, they would kill me and my family back home." Sarah's voice was shaking now, but she kept talking. For 2 years they moved us from place to place. We were never in the same location for more than a few weeks. They kept us locked up during the day and made us work at night. They barely gave us food, and if anyone tried to fight back, they would beat us until we couldn't move. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. He had heard about things like this on the news, but he never thought he would meet someone it had happened to. How did you escape? 3 nights ago, they were moving us to a new place. I was in the back of a truck with 5 other girls. The truck stopped at a gas station and the driver got out to buy cigarettes. The back door wasn't locked properly and I managed to push it open. I jumped out and ran into the woods. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. I ran all night. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get as far away as possible. When I saw your garage, I was so tired and hurt that I couldn't run anymore. I thought they would find me for sure. Marcus was quiet for a moment, trying to understand everything Sarah had told him. Who are these people? What kind of organization can do something like this? They call it a business, Sarah said bitterly. They buy and sell people like we're things, not human beings. The man who runs it in this area is named Victor Romano. He has connections everywhere: police, judges, politicians. That's why I can't go to the authorities. Some of them work for him. But surely not all police are corrupt, Marcus said. There must be someone we can trust. Sarah shook her head. 2 girls tried to escape before me. One of them made it to a police station. The next day she was back with us, beaten worse than before. The police officer had called Victor and told him where she was. The other girl tried to call her parents. Victor's people found out and killed her as an example to the rest of us. Marcus felt anger building up inside him like he had never felt before. How could people be so evil? How could they hurt innocent children and think it was okay? There's something else, Sarah said quietly. Something worse. What could be worse than what you've already told me? There are dozens of other girls still trapped. Some of them are only 13 or 14 years old. They're being held in a warehouse about 20 miles from here. Every week Victor's men take some of them away, and we never see them again. Sarah grabbed Marcus's hand. I know where the warehouse is. I memorized the route every time they moved us. I know how many guards there are, what time they change shifts, everything. I was planning to try to get help for the others, but I don't know who to trust. Marcus stared at Sarah in amazement. After everything she had been through, she was still thinking about saving other people. You want to go back? After you finally escaped? I can't leave them there, Sarah said firmly. Some of those girls have been there longer than I was. They've given up hope. If someone doesn't help them soon, they'll die there. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, life was going on normally. People were driving to work. Children were going to school. Families were having breakfast together. None of them knew that just 20 miles away, innocent girls were being held prisoner by monsters. What exactly are you asking me to do? Marcus asked. Sarah looked at him with eyes full of hope and desperation. Help me save them. I know it. Sounds crazy. I know you're just one person and I'm just a hurt girl. But we're the only ones who know where they are and who can't be bought by Victor's money. Marcus turned around and looked at Sarah. 3 days ago, his biggest worry was paying his electric bill. Now he was being asked to take on a criminal organization that had connections to corrupt police and politicians. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was probably impossible. But looking at Sarah's brave face, Marcus realized something had changed inside him. For the first time in his adult life, he had found something more important than his own safety and comfort. He had found a reason to fight. Tell me everything you know about this warehouse, Marcus said quietly. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. Sarah's face lit up with the first real smile Marcus had seen from her. You'll really help me? Yes, Marcus said, even though his heart was pounding with fear. We're going to get those girls out of there. Neither of them knew that at that very moment, Victor Romano's men were searching every building in a 10-mile radius, looking for a missing girl who knew too much about their operation. The clock was ticking, and time was running out faster than they realized. For the next 5 days, Marcus and Sarah worked together like they had been partners for years. Every morning, Marcus would open his garage and pretend to work on cars while Sarah stayed hidden in the back room. But their real work began after. He closed the shop each evening. Sarah had an amazing memory. She could remember every detail about the warehouse where the other girls were being kept. She drew maps on old pieces of paper, showing Marcus exactly where the building was located, how many windows it had, and where the guards usually stood. She knew which doors were always locked and which ones sometimes stayed open. The warehouse is shaped like a big rectangle, Sarah explained as she drew. The girls are kept in the back section, in rooms that used to be offices. There are usually 4 guards during the day and 6 at night. They change shifts at 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Marcus studied the drawings carefully. How many girls are there now? When I escaped, there were 18. But Victor's men bring new ones every few weeks and take others away. There might be more or less now. As Sarah talked, Marcus realized how smart and brave she really was. Most people who went through what she did would be too scared or too hurt to think clearly. But Sarah had spent 2 years watching, listening, and planning. She knew things about Victor's operation that could bring down the whole criminal network. Marcus had never thought of himself as a hero. He was just a simple man who fixed cars and minded his own business. But listening to Sarah talk about the other trapped girls, he felt something growing inside him that he had never felt before. It was anger mixed with determination. These criminals had hurt Sarah and were still hurting other innocent people. Someone had to stop them, and it looked like that someone was going to be him. "We need a plan," Marcus said one evening as they sat in his small office. "We can't just walk in there and ask them to let the girls go." Sarah nodded. "I've been thinking about that. The best time to try a rescue would be on Friday nights. That's when they move some of the girls to different locations. Most of the guards are busy loading trucks and dealing with the transport. The warehouse is less protected then." Marcus looked at the calendar on his wall. Today was Tuesday. That gave them 3 days to prepare. "What about vehicles?" Marcus asked. "If we manage to get the girls out, we'll need a way to transport them quickly." "That's your area," Sarah said with a small smile. "You're the mechanic." Marcus walked around his garage looking at the old vehicles he had been trying to fix. Most of them didn't run well enough for what they needed. Then his eyes fell on an old van sitting in the corner. It was big enough to hold many people, but it needed a lot of work. For the next 2 days, Marcus worked on that van like his life depended on it. He fixed the engine, replaced the tires, and made sure it could run fast and quietly. But he also made some special changes that Sarah suggested. "We need hiding places," Sarah said. "If the police stop us or if Victor's men catch up to us, we need somewhere to hide the girls quickly." Marcus built secret compartments under the van's floor and behind the back seats. He made them big enough for people to hide in but comfortable. Enough so they wouldn't get hurt during a long drive. He also installed extra mirrors so he could see in all directions while driving. Sarah helped him by keeping watch and by sharing more details about Victor's operation. She told him about the different routes the criminals used, the types of cars they drove, and how they communicated with each other. "Victor has people everywhere," Sarah warned. "Some police officers, some government workers, even some doctors and lawyers. They all get paid to keep quiet about what they see." "How can we know who to trust?" Marcus asked. "We can't trust anyone except each other," Sarah said firmly. "Once we rescue the girls, we'll have to take them somewhere far away, somewhere Victor's. People can't find them." As they planned, Marcus began to see a different side of Sarah. Despite everything she had been through, she was incredibly strong. She never complained about her injuries or felt sorry for herself. Instead, she focused all her energy on saving the other victims. Marcus realized that Sarah wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a survivor, and she was becoming a fighter. And Thursday night, their last night before the rescue attempt, Sarah couldn't sleep. She paced around the small room, checking and rechecking their plans. "What if something goes wrong?" she asked Marcus. "What if we get caught? What if we can't save them all?" Marcus put his hands on her shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. "Sarah, 3 months ago, I was just a lonely man who thought his life didn't matter. I fixed cars, ate alone, and went to bed every night wondering what the point of my existence was. Then you showed up and gave me a reason to be brave." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Maybe we'll succeed, maybe we won't, Marcus continued. But at least we're trying. Those girls in that warehouse don't have anyone else. We're their only hope. Are you scared? Sarah asked quietly. Terrified, Marcus admitted. But I'm more scared of what will happen to those girls if we don't try to help them. That night, as Sarah finally fell asleep on the couch, Marcus sat by the window and looked out at the dark street. Tomorrow night he would either be a hero or a dead man. He thought about his quiet, simple life and realized he didn't miss it. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that really mattered. Marcus had spent most of his adult life fixing broken cars. Now he was going to try to fix something much more important: broken lives. He didn't know if he was strong enough or smart enough for what they were planning, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let Sarah down. Early Friday morning, Marcus made final preparations to the van while Sarah went over their escape routes one more time. They had food, water, blankets, and first aid supplies. Marcus had even emptied his small savings account to buy gas and supplies for after the rescue. Are you ready? Sarah asked as the sun began to set on Friday evening. Marcus took a deep breath and nodded. Let's go save those girls. As they climbed into the van and drove toward the warehouse, neither of them spoke. They both knew that their lives were about to change forever. In a few hours, they would either be celebrating the rescue of 18 innocent victims, or they would be running for their lives from some very dangerous people. The poor mechanic and the brave survivor were about to attempt something that seemed impossible. But sometimes impossible things happen when ordinary people decide to do extraordinary acts of courage. The old van moved quietly through the dark streets as Marcus and Sarah drove toward the warehouse. It was 9:30 p.m. on Friday night, and the city was mostly empty. Marcus's hands were shaking as he held the steering wheel. His heart was beating, so fast he thought it might explode. Beside him, Sarah sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead with a look of determination on her face. Turn left at the next corner, Sarah said quietly. The warehouse is about 2 miles down that road. Marcus nodded and made the turn. As they got closer to their destination, they could see fewer streetlights and more empty buildings. This part of town had been abandoned by most businesses years ago. It was the perfect place for criminals to hide their illegal activities. Stop here, Sarah whispered when they were still half a mile away from the warehouse. We should walk the rest of the way and check things out first. Marcus parked the van behind an old gas station that had been closed for years. They both got out quietly and started walking toward the warehouse, staying in the shadows and moving carefully from building to building. When they got close enough to see the warehouse clearly, Marcus felt his stomach drop. The building was much bigger than he had imagined, and there were more guards than Sarah had expected. Instead of the usual 6 guards, Marcus counted at least 10 men walking around the property with guns. Something's wrong, Sarah whispered. There are never this many guards on a Friday night. As they watched from behind a pile of old construction materials, they saw trucks arriving at the warehouse. Men were loading large boxes into the trucks, and Marcus could hear voices shouting orders. The whole place was much more active than Sarah had said it would be. They must be doing a big transport tonight, Sarah said, her voice filled with worry. This is bad, really bad. Should we go back and try another night? Marcus asked. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then shook her head firmly. No. If they're moving a lot of girls tonight, this might be our only chance to save them. Once they're taken to different locations, we'll never find them all. Marcus looked at the warehouse again. What they had planned as a careful, quiet rescue now looked like it would be much more dangerous and complicated. But Sarah was right. If they didn't act tonight, those girls might disappear forever. Okay, Marcus said, trying to sound braver than he felt. What do we do? Sarah pointed to the back of the warehouse. See that small door on the side? That's where I escaped from. It's usually not guarded because it's hard to see from the main entrance. If we can get there without being seen, I can show you how to open it. They waited until the guards were busy with the trucks, then ran quickly across an open area to reach the side of the building. Marcus's heart was pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it, but they made it to the small door without being discovered. Sarah pulled out a thin piece of metal that she had taken from Marcus's garage. "I learned how to open this lock during my 2 years here," she whispered as she worked on the door. "There. Got it." The door opened quietly, and they slipped inside the warehouse. The building was darker than Marcus had expected, with only a few lights hanging from the ceiling. They could hear voices and footsteps coming from the front of the building, where the trucks were being loaded. "Follow me," Sarah whispered. "The girls are kept in the back section." They moved carefully through the warehouse, hiding behind boxes and machinery whenever they heard someone coming. Marcus was amazed at how quietly Sarah could move. She knew exactly where to step to avoid making noise. When they reached the back section of the warehouse, Sarah led Marcus to a hallway with several doors. "The girls are behind these doors," she said, "but we have a problem." "What?" "These doors are always locked from the outside and the keys are kept in the front office. We'll never be able to get them without being caught." Marcus looked at the heavy metal doors and the strong locks. Then he remembered something. "I brought some tools from my garage," he said, pulling a small bag from his shoulder. "I might be able to break these locks." Working as quietly as possible, Marcus used his tools to break the first lock. It took several minutes, but finally, the lock clicked open. Behind the door, they found 6 young girls sitting on the floor of a small dark room. The girls looked up at them with fear and confusion. "It's okay," Sarah whispered to them. "I'm Sarah. I used to be here with you. We're here to help you escape." The girls recognized Sarah and started to cry with relief, but their joy was mixed with fear. They had been prisoners for so long that they were afraid to believe they could really be free. "We need to move quickly," Marcus said as he broke open the second door. Behind it were 5 more girls, all looking thin and scared. As Marcus worked on the third door, they heard footsteps coming down the hallway. Someone was coming toward them, and there was nowhere to hide. "Take the girls and go," Marcus whispered to Sarah. "I'll handle this." "No," Sarah said firmly. "We stick together." A man appeared at the end of the hallway carrying a flashlight and a gun. When he saw Marcus and Sarah with the escaped girls, he shouted, "Hey, what are you doing here?" The man raised his gun, but Marcus was faster. He threw one of his heavy tools at the man's head, knocking him down. But the man's shout had alerted other guards, and they could hear people running toward them from different parts of the warehouse. "This way," Sarah yelled, leading the group of girls toward a different exit she remembered. "Hurry!" They ran through the warehouse with guards chasing them and shouting. Marcus stayed behind the group, protecting them from anyone who tried to follow. He had never been in a fight in his life, but somehow he found strength he didn't know he had. They made it to the side door they had entered through, but as they got outside, they saw that guards had surrounded the building. Their van was too far away, and there were too many armed men between them and their escape vehicle. "What do we do now?" one of the rescued girls asked, crying. Marcus looked around desperately. They were trapped in the open with nowhere to hide and no way to reach their transportation. After coming so far and risking everything, it looked like their rescue mission was about to end in disaster. Then Sarah pointed to an old factory building across the street. "There," she said. "If we can make it to that building, there are places to hide inside." Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. "You take the girls and run to that building," he told Sarah. "I'm going to create a distraction to give you time to escape." "Marcus?" "No," Sarah protested, but Marcus was already running toward the guards, shouting and making as much noise as possible. He knew he probably wouldn't survive what he was about to do, but at least Sarah and the girls would have a chance to get away. Gunshots echoed through the night and Marcus faced impossible odds. He realized that sometimes being a hero means being willing to sacrifice everything for people you barely know. Tonight, a simple mechanic had found the courage to become something extraordinary. Marcus ran straight toward the armed guards, shouting at the top of his lungs to draw their attention away from Sarah and the rescued girls. Bullets flew past his head as he zigzagged between old cars and piles of junk in the warehouse parking lot. He had no plan except to give Sarah and the girls enough time to reach the abandoned factory building across the street. Behind him, Marcus could hear Sarah leading the group of frightened girls toward safety. "Run!" She was telling them. Don't look back, just run. Marcus dove behind an old truck just as more bullets hit the metal above his head. His heart was beating so fast he could barely think straight. He had never been so scared in his entire life, but he also had never felt so sure about what he was doing. These girls deserved to be free, and if he had to die to make that happen, then that's what he would do. From his hiding spot, Marcus could see that some of the guards were still chasing Sarah and the girls. He had to do something to get all their attention focused on him. Marcus picked up a rock and threw it at one of the warehouse windows, breaking it with a loud crash. "Over here!" he yelled at the guards. "I'm the one you want." The trick worked. All the guards turned toward Marcus and started shooting in his direction. But in their excitement to catch him, they made a big mistake. They all gathered in one area, leaving their vehicles unprotected. Marcus saw his chance. He ran as fast as he could toward the guards' trucks and cars. Using skills he had learned from years of working on vehicles, he quickly opened the hoods and pulled out important parts from the engines. Within minutes, none of their vehicles would be able to start. But Marcus's luck ran out when he reached the last truck. A guard came around the corner and saw him destroying the engine. The man raised his gun and fired. The bullet hit Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around and knocking him to the ground. Pain shot through Marcus's body like fire. He could feel blood soaking through his shirt. The guard walked toward him with his gun pointed at Marcus's head. "You made a big mistake coming here tonight," the guard said with an evil smile. Just then, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police, cars and FBI vehicles came racing toward the warehouse with their lights flashing and sirens blaring. The guard who was about to shoot Marcus looked around in confusion and fear. Marcus couldn't believe what he was seeing. How had the police found them? Who had called for help? The answer came when he saw Sarah running toward him from across the street. In her hand was a cell phone. "I called 911, she shouted. "I told them everything about Victor's operation." "But you said we couldn't trust the police," Marcus called back, still lying on the ground and holding his wounded shoulder. "I called the FBI instead," Sarah replied as she reached him. "I remembered seeing a news report about an FBI agent who specializes in fighting human trafficking. I found her phone number online and called her directly." As police and FBI agents surrounded the warehouse, Marcus realized that Sarah had been thinking ahead even while they were running for their lives. She had remembered that there were good people in law enforcement who could be trusted, even if some local police were corrupt. The FBI agents quickly arrested all the guards and secured the warehouse. Marcus was taken to a hospital where doctors treated his gunshot wound. Sarah stayed by his side the whole time, holding his hand and telling him he was going to be okay. Over the next few days, as Marcus recovered in the hospital, the full story came out in the news. The FBI raid had uncovered one of the largest human trafficking operations in the country. They rescued not just the girls that Marcus and Sarah had freed, but dozens of other victims who were being held at different locations. Victor Romano and 37 of his associates were arrested. The FBI found evidence that linked them to hundreds of kidnappings over the past 10 years. Several corrupt police officers and government officials were also arrested for taking bribes to protect the criminal organization. Sarah became the star witness in the case against Victor. Her detailed knowledge of the operation and her brave testimony in court helped prosecutors build a strong case. All the main criminals received long prison sentences, and Victor himself was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the most amazing part of the story was what happened to Marcus and Sarah after the trials were over. The rescue had made them both famous across the country. People called Marcus a hero, and Sarah a brave survivor. Donations poured in from all over America to help the rescued victims and to support the fight against human trafficking. Marcus used the donation money to turn his small garage into something much bigger and more important. He created a safe house and job training center for survivors of human trafficking. The building was expanded to include dormitories, classrooms, counseling offices, and a medical clinic. Sarah, who was now 19 years old, became the director of the Survivor Support Program. She helped other rescued victims adjust to their new lives and taught them job skills so they could support themselves. Sarah also traveled around the country, speaking at schools and conferences about human trafficking and how people could help fight it. Marcus learned that many of the survivors had never learned basic skills like reading, writing, or simple math because they had been kidnapped so young. So he started teaching automotive repair classes, giving the survivors a practical skill they could use to earn money and build independent lives. The garage that had once been Marcus's lonely workplace became a busy center of hope and healing. Every day, Marcus would see survivors learning new skills, making friends, and building confidence in themselves. Some of them went on to college, others started their own businesses, and many became advocates who helped rescue other victims. Marcus never got married or had children of his own, but he became like a father to dozens of young people who had lost their families. Sarah was like a daughter to him, and together they created a new kind of family made up of people who had survived terrible things and chosen to help others. 5 years after that terrifying night at the warehouse, Marcus stood in his expanded garage and watched Sarah teaching a group of new survivors how to change a car tire. She was laughing and encouraging them, showing no signs of the frightened girl he had found behind those old tires years ago. Marcus realized that sometimes the most important moments in life come when you least expect them. He had thought he was just a poor mechanic with no purpose, but finding Sarah had shown him that he had the heart of a protector and the soul of a fighter. The scared girl and the lonely mechanic had saved each other in ways they never could have imagined. Together they had turned their pain into purpose and their survival into service to others. They proved that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose courage over fear and love over selfishness.